This is going to be a response video to a YouTuber that put up a simple question about when or if humanity forgets how to make CPUs. Now, this is going to be about, well, I'll just get to the point. Pen and paper on acid-free material and vellum last the longest. Also look up Roman concrete from 250 BC that still, we still would love to duplicate it. But let's go on. How about when humanity forgets how to make CPUs? A variation on a video done by a YouTuber, which will be linked below, that was September 23rd, 2025. If you're in the future, that's why I'm making the note of the time. That becomes very important. A central processing unit or graphical processing unit, CPU and GPU, both can last any number of years based on their design criteria. Consumer-grade equipment, not pro-grade, not durable goods, are only required to work X number of days or 5 years, depending on the presumptions and the laws. I'm not kidding. Durable goods, by definition, if you market them as being for professional use, etc., are supposed to last at least 5 years. It is a crapshoot. We have something we call infant mortality in the computer industry. Computer parts will die in the first year, about 50%. If they don't fail, that used item can become part of the gold standard of reliability. For instance, Sound Blaster AW32 and Sound Blaster AW64 sound cards that have nothing wrong with them, that have never had to have a single capacitor changed out. Procedure. Using exactly the right method, you desolder the electrolytic capacitors from them and replace them with newer caps that don't have to suffer from the capacitor debacle. That means you have to find a company that's making very high quality capacitors, over-designed, and put them on the board. Usually by running the wires in a very careful radiused arc kind of thing and soldering them to the board and carefully gluing them down with hot glue that's low temperature hot glue that bonds them. Yes, I've made ultra-long duration functional computer equipment. I have made what we call fish plate. Heat sinks that cover the entire board, fill up every bit of space but leave an air gap with little bumpers made out of silicon gel, to make it to where the thing has no need for you to ever take it apart again. And also replacing capacitors with ones that don't have any kind of formation of any kind of problem. But what's the longest a CPU can last? Here we go. Stock cooling standard CPUs technically are durable goods if they're not very poorly made. This is just the microprocessor itself, the chip, with a heatsink that is designed for it, that the company was willing to say was good enough for business usage and or embedded purposes. You have to look for those statements. Sometimes they're placed in quotes with a, "we do not guarantee this," not a guarantee. A legal disclaimer, because it really is not a legal disclaimer. They will last 5 years or more. 5 to 10 years if you use stock cooling. Over 10 years with just really good cooling, which almost everybody did. Then the infant mortality, as you buy them out of the shop after I build it and box it up and put it away and give you all the manuals, which you will inevitably lose, goes out. This includes all of the discs, the compact discs that were true stamped ones, mechanical stamped ones that last and are readable for 5 years. Yes, the CD-ROM and CD rewritable crisis happened. Let's continue. With good cooling and deliberately making them long-term or long now project compliant. Look up the long now project. You can make them last 20 years plus, because we know that because we have the evidence of the machine still working with not good cooling, but absurdly over-designed cooling. I'm talking about making heat sinks for old 386 and 486 processors, third and fourth generation CPUs, that are built the way you do now, with heat pipes, separators, every trick in the book to get the heat out of them, and undervolting them and underclocking them to run as slow as you'll tolerate, because running them fast, running them at a higher voltage, and running them hot is what kills the CPU and the video processor, otherwise known as the GPU, graphical processor unit. A Novell NetWare 3 server was found with 16 years of uptime and was shut down in 2013. Do the math. It's a 1997 computer. A 1977 computer running Fortran 77 eventually at 81,000 cycles per second. Not million, not billion. 81,000 cycles per second with 70 kbytes of RAM and or ROM using an 8-track tape drive for digital storage and a 160 baud, not kbaud, not megabaud, 160 baud 23-watt radio frequency transmitter modem worked over an enormous distance for 48 years. It's called Voyager 1. Running it slow. Running it well. Over-designing things so they don't break. You can find a hammer made in the 1950s by craftsmen that still isn't broken. You can buy a new one that'll break in 3 weeks. No, it's not that things were better back then. It's that people built things competitively by making them better. That includes that there are plastics that are better in the past, oddly enough, because they do break down. Look up all the different things that are called plastics and are technically chemical plastics and or the mechanical definition of plastic. The last CPUs to have Windows 7 support and therefore would run everything below Windows 7 because Windows 7 internally had subsystems that would run DOS, Windows 3.1, 95, 98 Millennium, that's the 9X series, Windows 2000, and Windows Millennium code and all that kind of stuff, and Windows NT code. These machines will run everything from 2015 backwards, which is the majority of the code that a lot of you look back on and say, hey, that's when games were optimized. I'm running a Windows 7 machine for more than the reason you might think. CPUs that fail that test of being able to run anything beforehand, a deliberate destruction of your ability to run older code. AMD's Ryzen and newer is blamed sometimes. Most, but not all, of the 7th generation Coffee Lake, Kaby Lake, Ice Lake, Whiskey Lake, etc. Intel processors. Some of them say Core i7, but they're really 6th generation labeling. See also the i7 6950X Extreme Broadwell E 10 core that you can trick into running Windows 7 or something. Now, why am I bringing all this up? Let's talk about this. Floppy disks last a specific length of time if you put them in a non-magnetic conducting material, and they're made from non-magnetic conducting material as well. There are floppy disks you could get from Maxell that were ultra-long life, archival grade, that had no metal in them, so there was nothing to disturb the magnetic field on them. And you'd be told every 5 years to put them into a floppy duplicator, copying the data with all of the defects that built up, figuring out between here and here, wherever the noise was, whether it was a 1 or a 0, and transfer it to another floppy with double redundancy of every file. Then you do a file check and see which files were bad, erase them, and then copy it back over the top of the other one and do them in, we call it ping-ponging, pairs of floppies. The floppies were made to where that they had a piece of cordage to put them in to duplicate them. You put them in a floppy duplicator, it would look for the one that had the best clean copy, and you had to know which one it was or you'd fuck it up, and it would renew it by reestablishing the magnetic field. The solid-state drives you have do this every week. I repeat, every one of you who's laughing in solid-state drive has it doing this automatically as defect criteria management every few hours in some cases. Meanwhile, laughs in electromechanical hard drives. I have hard drives from the first hard drive I ever owned was still readable when I duped the data off 2 years ago. I did it on a Windows 3.1 system, and when I duped it, it had 0 errors. I booted Windows 3.1 for work groups. Ooh, the good one. With all the shit on it, and played Canyon Mid because I had a copy on there. And a bunch of MP3s I got totally legit. Hey, at least I didn't use BearShare and get infected. I don't think, anyway. So, how many years ago was that? See, I don't think some of you get this. So, when humidity, it's humid. When humanity forgets how to make a CPU, what are they going to do? The way CPUs were created was by a stack of priorities. The first processors were taught to do logic and then arithmetic from logic functions. There's a matrix of 16 functions, primaries. Then the secondary functions that do subsets of doing addition, subtraction, and multiplication between bits, then nibbles, which is the minimum size at the time for you to do numbers, then alphanumerics at 8-bit, and then full word jumped to processes that would do a flowing effect. It looks like the Matrix, animation of how the math works. To do multiple things in one cycle was jumped to because someone made that leap. That leap has never, if you try to look up how we figured out how to do I won't even describe it. But the point is, the things your computers work off of right now are all based on coding that was basically arbitrary as to what was the first thing to do, but we've been able to dig up old processors and old code and reverse engineer it continually. It's not when the chips go bad. It's not when the chips die. It's not when we forget how to do the chips. It's when we forget how to be creative and try to figure out a puzzle. Humans will always be able to do this. We do that every time we dig up something underneath a pyramid somewhere. We're always reverse engineering things. Making it as obvious as possible how you did it and documenting things well. In spite of the corporate habit of destroying files for no goddamn reason. Epstein, we need to make sure we don't lose this. And this is how you do it. None of the shit lasts as long as stamping it into steel or printing it on paper. Out of all of them, acid-free paper and a printer that does actual printing, not some of the things you're thinking of. Oddly enough, a laser printer is actual printing if you post-process it correctly. Look up how to do that to make archival-grade paper documentation. And then you store this information by not letting it get screwed up. That's all of it. You can still read the first audio CD that was put out. It isn't suffering from degradation. You can get one. You can find them for sale. People love them because it's literally the first compact disc. You can get old tape player audio. As long as it has a wide enough band to it. 8-track works because that's almost conventional reel-to-reel, almost. As an example. But we can still read papyri in a fucking cave someplace, and we can still read chunks of stone. Just saying. This is just some thoughts inspired by the video I watched that ends in 8B UK, September 23rd, 2025. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. We'll all need it.